Financial assets are becoming a vital tool in the fight against climate change. Initiatives to address the worldwide issue is receiving funding from governments, organizations, and even private citizens. In this video, we'll examine the hundreds of millions of dollars being raised to create a greener and more sustainable future as we delve into the world of climate change financing. Will our generation redefine how we interact with the environment and protect the future of our planet? To combat climate change, reduce emissions, encourage adaptation to the effects that are already present, and foster resilience, financial resources and wise investments are required. However, the returns on these investments vastly outweigh any initial expenses. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, studies and publications revealed that making investments in climate action would significantly contribute to the development of a sustainable economy. The World Bank estimates that massive infrastructure investment will be required over the next 15 years, totaling around $90 trillion by 2030. However, it can recuperate such expenditures. It concluded that making the switch to a green economy could open up new job opportunities and economic prospects. On average, a $1 investment returns $4 in benefits. And the new Climate Economy Report, published in 2018, concluded that, according to a conservative estimate, aggressive climate action may result in a direct economic gain of $26 trillion through 2030 compared to business as usual. The pandemic did cause a temporary drop in emissions, but COVID-19 has not stopped climate change, and emissions have since climbed back to roughly where they were prior to the pandemic, continuing on a path that would cause global temperature increases well above Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius and have far more devastating effects. Whether we create or destroy wealth and possible avenues to prosperity will depend on the investments we make today. If we want to succeed in keeping climate change to levels that are sustainable, it's becoming increasingly obvious that the world cannot afford to burn all of its fossil fuel reserves. If we want to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can only burn a small portion of the confirmed fossil fuel stocks, according to the long-term economic reality. Policies that direct nations towards carbon neutrality well before 2050 will be necessary for this transition. Due to this, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has established 6 priority areas for climate action during the COVID-19 recovery phase, including investing in decent jobs, refraining from bailing out polluting businesses, giving up fossil fuel subsidies, ceasing investments in and construction of coal-fired power plants, accounting for climate risks and opportunities in all financial and policy decisions, fostering international cooperation, and ensuring a just transition that leaves no one behind. What's the Paris Agreement? The Paris Agreement acknowledges the need for specialized climate financing and urges making finance flows consistent with a pathway towards low greenhouse gas emissions and climate-resilient development. Making infrastructure more robust reduces emissions while also avoiding expensive repairs and minimizing the wide-ranging effects of natural catastrophes on people's livelihoods and well-being, especially those who are most vulnerable, as well as on businesses and economies. A transition to resilient, low-carbon economies has the potential to generate approximately 65 million net new jobs worldwide by 2030. The goal of the Paris Agreement is to align financial flows with a path towards low greenhouse gas emissions and development that is climate resilient. The global stocktake required by the agreement includes evaluating the advancement of assistance supply and mobilization. The Paris Agreement also emphasizes increased financial transparency and predictability. In accordance with the terms of the agreement, implementation must take into account equity and the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of different national circumstances. All nations, cities, financial actors, companies, and individuals must work together to address the climate catastrophe. Among these coordinated measures, developed countries agreed to pool their resources and raise $100 billion annually 2020 to help developing countries with their urgent requirements for mitigation and adaptation. Moving further, what part does the private sector play in the financing of climate change? What cutting-edge financing approaches can support both profitability and environmentally friendly solutions? How can firms match their financial goals with sustainable practices? The adoption of sustainable business plans that are compatible with a 1.5 degrees Celsius future has seen a rise in interest from businesses and some significant investors as decision-makers see the enormous development prospects presented by the global transition to a decarbonized economy by 2050. However, much more has to be done. and the collective journey of businesses and investors is still in its infancy. Did you know that major pension funds and investment firms are now beginning to move at scale by collaborating with the asset managers and businesses in their portfolios to decarbonize and align with net zero targets? The movement to involve the business sector in achieving the Paris targets is picking up steam. The UN-convened Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, one initiative announced during the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit, has members who now manage about $5 trillion in assets, showing that the number of financial actors prepared to walk the talk is growing. The alliance, which currently has 29 members, is developing significant techniques to align portfolios with the net zero Paris targets, including pension funds, insurance firms, and sovereign wealth funds. In order to speed up the decarbonization process, investors must take decisive actions to exercise their voting rights in the companies that make up their portfolios by consistently supporting climate resolutions at stakeholders' meetings. Mark Carney, the UN Special Envoy on Climate Finance and former Governor of the Bank of England, claims that a new and sustainable financial system is gradually emerging that will finance private sector initiatives and innovations, potentially amplifying the impact of governmental climate policies. This covers the expanding drive to incorporate climate hazards into decision-making through tools like the TFCD. The development of this new sustainable finance is not proceeding quickly enough for the world to reach net zero, he continued, adding that, like virtually everything else in the response to climate change, the task is large, the window of opportunity is short, and the risks are existential. While voluntary frameworks like the TCFD are in place, it will be crucial to level the playing field by enacting meaningful regulations on the disclosure and reporting of climate risks. This will help to guarantee that the disparities in country capacity are properly recognized and addressed. Why should we finance climate change? It's straightforward in the end. The world won't be able to meet its climate targets without investing in the correct areas. It will increase the world's temperature by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, worsening climate effects that will endanger everyone's health, livelihood, and general well-being. Significant financial investments are needed to combat climate change, such as in new energy systems and resilient infrastructure. But ignoring the climate costs even more. All nations must cut their emissions and prepare for climate change. However, many developing nations lack the means and know how to do so. All states concur that wealthy, technologically advanced industrialized nations must step up and boost their financial support for climate action in developing countries, especially the most vulnerable and impoverished. In order to combat climate change, international cooperation is crucial. Does climate finance actually matter? Yes, according to an expanding body of knowledge and proof, here are a few instances of how it's benefiting several nations. In order to advance ecosystem-based solutions through community forest restoration, scale up climate-wise agriculture, strengthen disaster preparedness, and establish goals for carbon-neutral travel destinations by 2030, Nepal, a less developed nation, has tapped into international investment. Additionally, it's received recognition on a global scale for better resource management in support of climate change. Cambodia pioneered the development of solar energy, which cut electricity costs in half and sped up the country's transition away from the protracted reliance on coal and hydroelectricity. For the first time ever, Chile has assigned a monetary value to the greenhouse gas emissions that decarbonization prevents. For instance, a business would benefit financially by producing renewable energy if it shuts down a coal plant. With a $125 million initial payout, Chile will be able to meet its ambitious climate goals and save 1.2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. Climate finance is supporting goat rearing as a brand new sector of the agricultural economy in Zambia, where drought scorches rural areas and crops aren't growing as well as they once did. This sector will mostly help women adapt their livelihoods. In accordance with the Paris Agreement's nationally determined contributions, Financing for the Climate Promise helps 118 nations prepare for more aggressive climate action. Finances are a key motivating factor in the fight to save our world. We can plan a better future by funding climate-friendly initiatives and sustainable solutions. Every dollar becomes a potential tool and a chance to actually change the world. Let's acknowledge the value of funding and work together to take concrete steps to save and maintain our climate for future generations. If you like this video, do check out the next one about what you can do for climate change by clicking on the link on your screen.